Hi, welcome to or back to my channel. My name's Annie, and today I'm going to be embarking on a journey to Middle Earth. I am going to be reading The Hobbit. Oh, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. The Hobbit by J.R.R. This is the beginning of a series of what will be 4 videos total where I read The Hobbit and then each of the 3 Lord of the Rings books. Basically, I had been wanting to read The Lord of the Rings this year since like November 2024. This is my year of fantasy, hopefully, fingers crossed. I really want to get familiar with the genre, and that involves reading the classics like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And luckily, I found out that Booked and Busy is doing a Middle Earth along where she and a few other booktubers are reading the books each month. So The Hobbit was the first book, the January pick, and February, which we're in right now, is for the Fellowship of the Ring, which I haven't started yet. I'm gonna get to it very soon, and then so on and so forth. So I was like, perfect. I was gonna read these books anyway, so this is a great way to like make sure that I'm sticking to it, kind of. So yes, in this video, I'm going to be reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Why can't I say his name? J.R.R. Tolkien. For some reason, the R.R. bit is hard for me. But I have read this book before. I think I was maybe like 8 or 9, so I can't really remember much, and I've never read Lord of the Rings. So I'm really excited to start on this journey. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the vlog. Hi, so I have read the first chapter of The Hobbit, and I just thought I would check in and share some thoughts. I'm obsessed already. Just for some background, I actually have read this book before. I think I was in elementary school or middle school, so it was quite a long time ago. So I do vaguely know the story, and I think I did watch 1 or 2 of the movies when they came out. Does this have 3 movies? I don't know. If it does, I will be watching them all. Like, I'm gonna watch all of the movies, but I am loving it so far. Also wanted to mention that in university, I did study English. That was my major, and I took a whole class on Old English, which J.R.R. Tolkien was super inspired by in his writing. And I read an essay by J.R.R. Tolkien about Old English fiction, and I can very clearly see how those stories have inspired this story. I can't speak on Lord of the Rings yet because I'm not there, but it definitely has inspired this story. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about that, just based on what I remember from that class. I think I took it in like first semester, my final year of uni, so like September to December 2023. Basically, this story follows Bilbo Baggins. He is a hobbit, which is kind of like a gnome-like figure that lives in a hole and has a very comfortable existence. Like, they really love comfort and luxury, and they live in these like holes, and it's just so cozy. Like, the writing is so atmospheric. I am obsessed with the like setting we're in and the Shire and all of that. Also, side note, sorry, I'm a bit scattered today. I am also listening to the audiobook with narration by Andy Serkis. I think that's his name. If not, I will correct it. And it is just fantastic. And I knew I had to do that because I have been hearing everyone say how good his audiobooks are for The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series. And I've never actually like tandem read or immersion read, I don't know which it's called, before this. I think I tried it once in the past, but it was like, I felt like the audiobook was going too slowly, but I'm really loving just kind of savoring things and noticing how maybe Andy Serkis will like read something a bit different tonally than I had imagined it in my mind, and I think it really enhances the story. So would highly recommend doing both if you can. If not, just the audiobook is fantastic. So going back to what I was saying about Old English stories, a very typical story structure for an Old English story is a hero leaves home, leaves like comfortable existence, goes on a quest, experiences some sort of dangers, acquires some sort of treasure, or maybe it just defeats a beast and comes back and is awarded and praised. And there's typically a scene where once they come back to like a traditional kind of like dining hall type of setting, they will tell the story of how everything happened. So Old English stories are not only written stories in Old English, but they also mention that these are orally told traditions. I feel like I'm getting too nerdy with this, but I thought Old English at first, and when I was studying it, I was like, God, this is so boring. But it was actually really interesting. I did have to start translating things from Old English to Modern English, which was really hard. But the title of this, There and Back Again, which is like, the title of this is The Hobbit, but there's an alternate title, which is There and Back Again. That phrase can kind of be used to describe a lot of Old English tales. There's a hero, they start somewhere, they go there to where the treasure is or where this monster is, and then they come back and they receive all sorts of praise for it, and they get recognized by their elders and all of this stuff. So The Hobbit is exactly that, and that's what was on my mind a lot, actually, reading the first chapter. Aside from just feeling just totally immersed in the world, like I am obsessed with this audiobook physical combo. I felt like I was there. I mean, it does help that I have seen the films. Granted, it was like a long time ago. I think I saw them when they first came out, like the Hobbit films. So I do have something to picture. But I just think like I'm so excited. I think I have been in a bit of a personally kind of dark place. I haven't been feeling great about how things are going in the world or my personal life. So this book, like just the first chapter just felt like a hug and like a return to simpler times. Like I know that there's danger and stuff in this book, but I'm a little bit like, you know, like this feels like a complete escape for me. Wow, all that just on the first chapter, but I am so excited to be continuing with this book, and I'll let you know when I get a bit farther into it. Hi, so it has been a couple days and I am 85 pages into The Hobbit. I just finished the chapter Riddles in the Dark. So I'm about to read Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire, and this is like where the book is really picking up. You've got iconic characters coming in the chapter I just read, namely Gollum. Gollum is the iconic character. Andy Serkis, oh my god. Like, his narration is everything, and his Gollum voice is actually fucking insane. Like, it's so scary and gross, and like you feel bad for him. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've been taking some notes, as you can see, because this is my brother's copy of The Hobbit, hence why it's all dented. I can't believe you did that, Jack, for Christmas. I don't know why, because I'm not like a massive Bob Ross fan, but my mom gave me these Bob Ross post-it notes as a stocking stuffer. Thank you, Mom. I do love them. I do, and I'm using them. So I've been writing little notes. I will go through the notes because I have some honestly hilarious comments to make. I'm in a strange mood today, can you tell? Also, I have decided these vlogs are going to be spoiler filled. I feel like it's a little bit hard to spoil The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But I actually don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, so enter at your own risk. I guess it could be spoiled. But anyway, this book came out in 1937, so it's been a while. I'm sure people have seen the movie. Like, I think we all know kind of what's happening. And all of this is like coming back to me as I'm reading it. Also, this edition is the 75th anniversary edition, and it has some little illustrations in it, which I think are so fun. Like, there's this scene with some trolls, and then you get to see like the trolls are like lingering in the back. So it's nice. I like the illustrations. They really do kind of add something. Like, it's just really fun. And I love the way that Tolkien writes. It's very, like, I don't think fairy tale would be the right word because it has kind of different connotations to what I'm talking about. But the way that he writes is very evocative of, like, olden times, ancient tales that have been passed down and, like, all that. I mean, the oral tradition of storytelling is, like, basically a big part of this. So I'm really loving it. I'm just gonna go through these notes and see what I've got here. Oh yeah, the trolls. So they, like, meet these trolls in this forest, and, you know, all the dwarves and Bilbo and Gandalf have, like, fantasy names. You know, like, you wouldn't really meet someone here in the real world with the name Bilbo or Gandalf, but the trolls' names are Bert, Tom, and William. And I just thought that that was really funny. Also, in this scene, I wrote, you think Bilbo might do something heroic, but he's just saved by Gandalf. Like, there's a scene with the trolls. They're, like, basically these massive creatures. They're kind of like giants that will just kind of eat anything. And they hate dwarves, I think, and they would love to eat them. And somehow Bilbo gets, like, thrown into a tree. It seems like, oh, okay, maybe this is his moment to, like, prove himself as a hero. But nope, Gandalf saves the day. As Gandalf is wont to do. Like, Gandalf I love, but I want to know more about him. And I know he's in Lord of the Rings too, so, like, I assume that I will learn more about him. But he kind of just, like, when trouble happens, he disappears. And then reappears later and saves everyone. And I'm like, Queen, where do you go in the middle of all this? Like, are you just waiting and watching? And also, give Bilbo a chance. You probably won't do well, but, like, give him a chance. I think also the songs in this book are super fun, and they go with the whole oral storytelling tradition. Like, we have elves singing songs. I think the trolls sang a song. Did the trolls sing a song? I don't think they sang a song. But, like, later on, there are these goblins, like orcs under the mountain, and they also sing a song. And, like, music really is the universal language. It's kind of beautiful. I feel like I'm really rambling this clip. It's only been 5 minutes. Okay, so the next note I have is saying that I love the fairy tale way that Tolkien tells the story, like the writing I was mentioning earlier. And this is the very first page of chapter 4, Overhill and Underhill. And I think this is the specific sentence I was referring to. Like, it's just very fun the way he writes. He says, it was a hard path and a dangerous path, a crooked way and a lonely and a long. And I'm like, okay, that's, I don't know. It's just fun. It's fun. And also, so they're going up this mountain, and there are these trolls, like, during this thunderstorm, or giants, sorry, and they are throwing these big boulders at each other during the thunderstorm. And I wrote, the giants played their rock game so that one day the Cullens could play baseball during the storm. My monkey man. I make myself giggle. But my favorite chapter by far is the one that I just read, so Riddles in the Dark. So basically, they're inside this mountain. They travel up this mountain. They're trying to get over the mountains. I think they're the Misty Mountains, because it's like, far over the misty mountains cold. Basically, they take shelter in this cave for the night because there's the thunderstorm. And they wake up in the middle of the night, and, like, goblins pull them deep into the cave, or, like, into this crack that goes down into, like, these tunnels in the mountain. And Bilbo gets separated from everyone. He finds a ring, then eventually finds Gollum on this still lake in, like, basically pitch blackness. Like, he can barely see, but his sword his little dagger is kind of glowing, because these swords that they looted from the trolls are, like, legendary swords and kind of, like, have their own inner light or something. And he meets Gollum. The audiobook for this is fantastic. I was thinking reading this is such a fucking terrifying situation. I just watched The Descent a few weeks ago, which is I don't know if it's a good movie. I really couldn't tell you. I thought it was kind of cheesy, but at the same time, it was a scary situation. And it's like this horror movie where these girls are going, what's it called? When you go, is it spelunking? When you go, like, down into caves and like all that, and bad things happen down there, like it's a horror movie. But this gave me those same vibes of like, you're trapped miles under the earth and it's like pitch black and there's other things down there with you and you can't really see, and those things that are down there with you have adapted to be able to like kind of see more in the darkness and to smell you, and no, just scary. Gollum is such a sad, like a kind of a tragic figure in this story. Honestly, I felt bad for him while being scared of him and repulsed by him. I really like it when you have complicated feelings towards a villain in a story and they're not just the villain. Tolkien mentions that there were days where Gollum lived with his grandmother and he used to live, you know, out, not under the mountain and trapped. And he's sad and he's lonely and it just makes me sad. Gollum and Bilbo make this like deal where they're going to give each other riddles to solve, and then when someone can't solve it, so if Bilbo can't solve it, Gollum gets to eat him. And if Gollum can't solve Bilbo's riddle, then he has to show Bilbo the way out. They have this whole riddle battle. Also, Bilbo says the funniest thing. Like, he's really slaying. He's like kind of smart. Like, I feel like he really kind of comes into his own in this little riddle match with Gollum. Like, he's so out of his depth, but he's finding someone that's just gonna like talk to him, and it's like a battle of wits, which I think Bilbo is much more suited towards than a battle or something, like an actual fighting battle. He says, he gives Gollum like a hard riddle to solve, and it says, it proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and still he did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some while, Bilbo became impatient. Well, what is it? He said. The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noise you're making. Bilbo. He really ate with that. I thought that was so funny. Like, I was like, why are you joking around like this? He could kill you. And yeah, I just overall felt really bad for Gollum. Basically what happens then is eventually Bilbo asks the question, what's in my pocket? Which Gollum does not solve. Bilbo thinks he's like out free, and then Gollum wants to trick him. So he goes back to his island like before he's gonna show Bilbo out and looks for his ring, which is his birthday gift. But it's the ring that Bilbo has in his pocket. And Gollum is thrown into like this frenzy. Like, he's so pissed because he's like, I know what Baggins has in his pocket. It's my ring. And basically it's a ring of power, and it will turn the wearer invisible. And Bilbo uses it to escape. But it's just it's so sad. I feel really bad for Gollum. I know he's the bad guy, but I just wish we could all be friends. Anyway, at the part where I am now, at the beginning of out of the frying pan into the fire, which doesn't bode well for this chapter, Bilbo has like escaped the goblins, gotten out of the mountain, but now, you know, he's on the other side of these mountains by himself and he's separated from everyone else. And I guess we'll see where that goes. Sometimes I'm like, I really don't get how people did it in the past with not being able to like call someone. Because if you're like stranded in the past, you got no one else around, you just have to deal with it. Like, you just have to maybe like find the next town and then hopefully meet up with your friends somewhere along the way. So don't know how Bilbo is going to deal with this. I figure something will happen that they'll like join back up and it will all be fine. Well, actually I know that happens, but I am just really enjoying my time with this. Sorry, this was such a long update. I will probably update you guys if anything big happens. Otherwise, I might update you guys at the end of this.
They're the same picture.
Hi. God. It's like 1:30 in the morning. I was craving Taco Bell, but I've had stomach problems like all day. Just like acid reflux, cramps, and I started craving Taco Bell. Instant regret. Instant regret. Just finished my food. Anyway, hi. I have finished The Hobbit. I did actually finish it maybe like a week ago. I was waiting to update you guys until I'd seen the films. I just finished the first one. Guys, why are the films so long? So long. And why are there 3 for this book, which my copy is 276 pages? I do kind of get why they're long after watching the first one, but I'll get to that. So, The Hobbit. I finished it. I gave it 4 stars. I ended up really loving it. I cannot for the life of me remember when I last updated you guys. I think I was like halfway through. So I thought I'd give some thoughts about the ending and then just kind of general thoughts about the story overall, and then we can go into the first film. I really loved the whole feel of this book. Like, this book made me feel nostalgic for a time when I wasn't even alive, if that makes sense. A time when oral storytelling was like the prime mode of, you know, passing down information and stories. Like, there's something about a kind of old school, like epic fantasy type of setting that makes me nostalgic. And yeah, it's nostalgic for something I wasn't a part of. And no one is, because there's dragons. What am I saying? Anyway, nostalgia, which I loved. I also loved Tolkien's writing. I think I've mentioned this. Like, I just think it's brilliant and it's so atmospheric. I also think that the world building he does is so concise. I was watching the live show about this, which I had so much fun watching the live show. So I'm excited to like keep that up every month. And I forget who it was, but they pointed out that the world building was so concise, and like an author today would never be able to make this a almost 300-page book. Like, it would be 800 pages. And I have to agree. I mean, just look at the film. Look at the film. Notable moments. Thorin died. And I can't say I was too sad. I hate Thorin. I hated him so much. He's so mean to Bilbo. And for what? And he's so, like, in the book, like, he's supposed to be this great hero and that, but he and the dwarves just sit on their asses and make Bilbo do everything. And then talk shit about him when he's not, like, doing a great job because he's never been on an adventure before. I'm sorry, Thorin Oakenshield, like, you're supposed to be, like, this man of legends who's, like, great in battle and that, but you're so lazy. Like, why do you set off on a whole journey to recover the land of your people, which, like, slay? I love that. But then you don't want to do any actual work? I don't know. The dwarves were pissing me off in this. I love Balin, though. Balin was the dwarf that always, like, had Bilbo's back. And I loved him for that. A lot of the other dwarves kind of, like, fall to the background. Like, they're not as, like, distinguished as I would say they might be in the film when you can actually see each of them. But I love Balin. He believed in Bilbo. I hated Thorin. I was like, are you serious? The dwarves as a whole were getting on my nerves. They were. I wonder if I can find, there's this passage about how you can't really just expect that much out of dwarves because of the way that they are, like their temperament and stuff. I want to see if I can find it. So it says on page 196, this is part of the chapter Inside Information, where Bilbo actually like goes and talks to Smaug. They send Bilbo down this like little tunnel to go talk to Smaug and like scope things out. And he's like, hey, like, does anyone want to come with? And they're all like, no. But then I did put a note that I love Balin because it does say, the others made no pretense of offering except old Balin, the lookout man, who was rather fond of the Hobbit. He said he would come inside at least, and perhaps a bit of the way too, ready to call for help if necessary. Slay. Love you, Balin. So it says, the most that can be said for the dwarves is this. They intended to pay Bilbo really handsomely for his services. They had brought him to do a nasty job for them, and they did not mind the poor little fellow doing it if he would, but they would have all done their best to get him out of trouble if he got into it, as they did in the case of the trolls at the beginning of their adventures, before they had any particular reasons for being grateful to him. There it is. Dwarves are not heroes, but calculating folk with a great idea of the value of money. Some are very tricky and treacherous and pretty bad lots. Some are not, but decent enough people like Thorin and company if you don't expect too much. Great, they sound like great friends. I don't know. It's like, the narrative's like, yeah, temper your expectations. Like, the dwarves are not all that. Towards the end, it's so interesting what happens in kind of like the climactic moments of this book. It kind of just zooms away from our characters we've been following the whole time and drops us in a completely different place. And this guy Bard, so slay, by the way, he's a pessimist and it saves everyone's life. So I aspire to be that pessimistic. What am I saying? My sister is always telling me that I'm too pessimistic, and I am a little bit, but this guy Bard is so pessimistic and it saves everyone's lives. Well, like the people he can save, and then he kills Smaug. So I kind of aspire to be him. He's really cool. The dwarves and Bilbo don't have to kill the dragon. Smaug like goes out looking for them, and then a hero that we're introduced to like 5 pages before he kills the dragon, and then he becomes like the new kind of like leader, like the leader of his town, which is cool. I just found it so interesting that like we were on this story, this like journey with all these characters for so long, and then the big thing happens and you're like, okay, well, how are the dwarves and Bilbo gonna kill the dragon? And I couldn't remember, even though I read this before. And then they don't do it. I was a little bit annoyed. I will say I do think the dwarves should have had to kill the dragon, because they did nothing the entire book. Okay, not like nothing, but like seriously, they did not help very much. I just found it really interesting the way that everything happened, and I did kind of like it. I don't know if I just liked it because it was weird. Like, I was kind of like, oh, well, this seems like a bit, it almost felt anticlimactic, but I liked that about it. I was like, this is kind of daring of Tolkien to do. And then there's this big battle with these 5 armies, which honestly can't remember too much about. Thorin died and thinks that Bilbo's like sold them out to the elves. Long story, but whatever. Thorin is just, it's like a big baby. Like, I just don't like him. And then like on his deathbed, he like forgives Bilbo, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really too sad that he died. And then everyone splits the riches and Bilbo goes home. It ends back in his little hobbit hole, and here we go, we've got a little picture. And I really liked it. I think that there were parts where I could have been maybe more engaged, like some parts where I felt a little bit, like the story was a little bit too impersonal sometimes. Like, I think that it's very like fairy tale storytelling, but sometimes I want to feel more up close with the characters a little bit. And it's very like, this is big and legendary and all that, which is kind of what I signed up for. I hope I'm at least making a little bit of sense in this clip. I overall really liked it. I think I'm anticipating loving The Lord of the Rings. I know it's quite different from this, and it's like more intense. I mean, this is a kid's book, you know? This is a children's book technically, so it's gonna be a little bit more simplistic, and I'm excited to like really get into like everything in Lord of the Rings. Moving on to the film. So I just watched the first one tonight. Guys, I added up, I had to check out the films from my library, and I was like looking at the runtimes while I was walking back to my car, and I was like, okay, so 2 hours and 40 minutes for the first one, 2 hours and 40 minutes for the second one, and 2 hours and 20 minutes for the third one. And I think I added it up to something like 7 hours and 20 minutes for 3 films. God damn. There was something I kind of liked about how much Peter Jackson added into the movie. I went into it a little bit worried that I would be kind of spoiled for Lord of the Rings stuff, because I did hear that, like, I was looking it up to try to see if I would be, and it just kind of seems like maybe some things would make more sense if you had seen the Lord of the Rings films. Like, it's foreshadowing stuff that, you know, if you've seen the films of Lord of the Rings and read the books, that you know like how that's gonna play into things later. But I wasn't too bothered by it. I think there were lots of differences about the film, and I found it really interesting to think about. I'm not going to talk about all of them because there's so many, but I'll talk about a few major things. One I thought was super interesting is the change in Bilbo's character, and it's a pretty big one in my opinion. So in the film, Bilbo chooses to go on this journey, and in the book, Bilbo's basically like not forced into it, but really like shoved into it. He basically goes to bed after everyone comes over in the book on that night, and they tell him about their journey and stuff, and he's like, I'm not gonna do that, and he goes to bed. This is the same in the film, but in the morning in the book, when he wakes up, he's like, oh well, guess everyone's gone, and sits down to have breakfast. Then Gandalf comes in and is like, you have to go now, go, and so then Bilbo goes, which is kind of like, I think it's complicated to think about how much choice he has in that situation. Like, Gandalf is pretty intimidating. Bilbo's very used to, like, polite society. I think he'd have a pretty hard time saying no to Gandalf, to be honest. In the film, there's this whole added thing where he has to sign, like, a little contract or something. And it just kind of, like, it's a very obvious, like, it signifies that he's, like, signing on to this journey and he's, like, willingly participating. And he wakes up in the morning, signs it, and runs after everyone, and Gandalf is with everyone. Bilbo in the book would never be caught dead running around his neighborhood. So he signs and he's like, guys, wait, I'm coming. And I think that this change is a really big deal because the implication in the book is that Bilbo's really content with his life as it is. He loves it. He's happy, he's in his comfort zone, he has his like small pleasures, and he's good with that, you know? He doesn't see the need to change anything, but he ends up going on this journey kind of against his will and accidentally kind of stumbles into realizing that he has so much more in himself than he thought. And don't get me wrong, like, there is a little bit of curiosity in him in the book. Like, he is a little bit intrigued by the adventure, but he's really trying to like tamp it down. Maybe this is controversial to say, but I do think that if he didn't go on the adventure in the book, I think he would have been kind of okay with it. I think he would have been like, well, oh, there was a little part of me that wanted to go, but honestly, like, things are pretty good the way they are. I don't think that the same can be said about the Bilbo in the movie. The implication of Bilbo's actions at the beginning of the movie are that there is something he finds a bit dissatisfying about this life in the Shire. He wants something more, and he is inspired by the like stories about the Took side of his family. He wants to be someone of note, someone that people tell stories about, even if it's like in a smaller way, like how he hears stories about people on the Took side of his family that are adventurers, and he wants to discover some of this like greatness in himself, and he pushes himself to do that. So I don't know, I kind of like the message that the Bilbo in the book has a bit more. I like the idea that you can discover new things about yourself that are so fantastic and discover your own courage without even like really trying to look for it. I like that. So yeah, I think off the bat, that is very different in the movie, and it sheds a whole different light on Bilbo's character. Other things, I did make a couple notes while I was watching the film, but not too many, so I'll just like talk about the ones I remember. Gandalf is so funny in the film. Like, there's so much more to him than in the book. He makes all these big speeches about like the meaning of life and stuff, which are really cute. Someone asks him like why he decided to bring Bilbo on the trip, and he's like, because Bilbo makes me brave. When he gives Bilbo the little sword, the dagger that he uses, he's like, sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is not to choose when to kill, but when not to kill, or something like that. So he has like all these little philosophies, and I find it so endearing. Like, I do like him better than the Gandalf in the book, because it's almost like there's not really much to work with there. I know he's he comes back in a big way in Lord of the Rings. Also, obviously, I like Thorin more in the movies. Like, he's nice, he's cool in the film. There's also like a scene that's basically like the final scene of the first film. Thorin kind of accepts Bilbo and is like, you know, I was really wrong about you. Because Bilbo saves Thorin's life. Thorin gets chomped by this like big hellhound type thing. Anyway, lots different. I did like the first film. I'm a little bit worried about the next two, especially the last one, because I tend to zone out when there's extended action sequences. And the last film is apparently just all the Battle of the Five Armies, which is like 20 pages in this thing, which is more than enough for me. So we'll see. I feel like I've been slightly incoherent in this clip, and if that is the case, I apologize. I hope I was able to get things across relatively well. I'll check in with you guys once I've seen the other two films, and we'll just kind of wrap up then. Hi, I just filmed the intro. I'm here for my final thought on the Hobbit films. I've now seen The Desolation of Smaug and The Battle of the Five Armies, and out of the three films, I actually think that The Desolation of Smaug is my favorite one. I think a lot of people are of the opinion, from what I can tell, that the first one, An Unexpected Journey, is the best one, and then they kind of decrease in quality as you go on. But I found the second one to be the most interesting. Like, I feel like it had the most going on, and I think that's probably why I ended up liking it the most. It starts from when Bilbo and the dwarves enter Mirkwood until they piss off the dragon, and the dragon is like flying towards Lake Town. So it covers quite a sizable chunk of the material, a good bit of the middle portion, and honestly, like, the last bit with the Battle of the Five Armies and stuff is really like the last 40 pages of the book. So the third film covers, in 2 hours and 20 minutes, 40 pages of the book. Now, as I mentioned before, the director, Peter Jackson, did add in a lot of stuff, and for the most part, I actually enjoyed it. I think it made it a bit exciting and it felt different, and I know that he added a lot of stuff that would be like tie-ins to the Lord of the Rings films, because those came out first. But as someone who didn't know about that stuff, like, I was just kind of along for the ride, especially with whatever Gandalf was doing. There's a necromancer kind of mentioned in The Hobbit, but the film, to see Gandalf trying to deal with that, like, force of evil in a much more prominent way. Another note I'd make is that the film had a real sense of conveying, like, the evilness of the ring that Bilbo finds. In the book, it's kind of like not really depicted as good or bad, but in the movie it's like it's calling to him, it's whispering stuff to him, it makes him act a bit erratically, similarly to how the gold affects Thorin. So I thought it was interesting, and I'm so excited, like, now more than ever, to read The Lord of the Rings and to watch those films. Other notes, just that Killy's hot. If I haven't mentioned it, I'm a big fan. As you probably can tell from whatever B-roll I shot watching the films, I think I just wanted to pull out my phone every time he was on the screen, because I think he's so fine. He had a really, really underdeveloped romance with this elf. I forget her name, but she was super cool. She's only in the films though, I think. I don't think she's in Lord of the Rings. I asked my brother. So she was just like made up to be a love interest for Killy, and it's so underbaked. But honestly, I love Killy so much that I kind of just bought it. I was like, wow, oh my god, this is so sad. They can't be together. And then he died at the end, and I was like, I knew it was coming, but it was really hard for me. I think overall, I did enjoy the films. The Battle of the Five Armies was obviously my least favorite. Like, it was just so long and kind of bloated. Like, it was interesting for what it was, but I've mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of long action sequences in films. When the last film in the trilogy is like mostly scenes on the battlefield, I kind of check out sometimes. They made Thorin a lot more likable in the films, which was probably good. He did need that. Like, he just kind of sucks. And made the dwarves in general a bit more nice for Bilbo to be around. They still don't have much distinction in the film, apart from probably Balin, who I've mentioned is my favorite, Killy and Philly, because they're the young ones and, you know, they're hot, and obviously Thorin. But the rest kind of just blend together, which I think it is kind of a lot to ask for a film to like have created 13 really distinct personalities for each one. I think it was kind of something that they didn't have time for. So I'm not too fussed about that, especially because it wasn't really like they each had their own character traits as much in the book. Yeah, they made Thorin more likable. I still didn't really like him, especially in the last film. He just sucked. I know he was like under the influence of the gold. He had like the gold sickness, but I still just thought, you know, he's not the best guy. But overall, like, the movies, the vibe of the films, I think kind of adequately match that of the book, except on a grander scale. Like, they kind of make it more of like a spectacle, I guess would be what I would say. But I enjoyed the films for what they were. I'm so glad that I read The Hobbit, and I'm so excited to start on Lord of the Rings. So stay tuned for next month, because I will be reading The Fellowship of the Ring, and I can't wait to talk about it. And I'll be watching the film in that video as well. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel. I am trying to read a lot of fantasy this year, so if that's something that you're interested in seeing from me, let me know. If there's any books you want me to read, if you have any recommendations or videos you'd like to see from me, please let me know. If you're still watching to this point, use the mountain emoji. I found one. And for far over the misty mountains. I hope you're having a great day. I love you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.